Japan is an island country in East Asia, located in the Northwest Pacific Ocean. The country extends from the Sea of Japan to the east of China, North Korea, South Korea, and Russia, from the Sea of Okhotsk in the north to the East China Sea, and Taiwan in the south. Its de facto capital and largest city is Tokyo. The kanji characters that make up its name mean sun and origin, so it is called the land of the rising sun.
But now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you.
Japan is an archipelago of 6,852 islands. The largest of these islands are Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku, which make up 97% of the country's land area and are often referred to as the home islands. With a population of over 125 million. It is the world's 11th most populous country and also one of the most densely populated countries. About 3/4 of the country's land is mountainous, which leads to a highly urbanized population concentrated in the narrow coastal plains. The country is administratively divided into 47 prefectures and geographically into 8 traditional regions. The Greater Tokyo Metropolis, which includes the prefectures and cities around the capital, Tokyo, is the most populous metropolitan area in the world. Archaeological research shows that people have lived on the Japanese islands since the Upper Paleolithic period. In written history, Japan's name first appears in Chinese texts from the 1st century. Japan's history has been shaped by its isolation for many years after being influenced by the outside world. Between the 4th and 9th centuries AD, Japanese kingdoms united under an emperor and the Yamato dynasty based in Heian-kyo. From the 12th century onwards, political power was in the hands of a series of military leaders called shoguns and feudal lords called daimyo, and was exercised by samurai, a warrior noble class. After a century of civil war, the country was reunified in 1603 under the Tokugawa shogunate, which implemented an isolationist foreign policy. In 1854, a United States fleet forced Japan to open up to the west, which led to the end of the shogunate and the restoration of imperial authority in 1868. In the Meiji era, the new Japanese empire adopted a Western-style constitution and followed a program of industrialization and modernization. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, the Russo-Japanese War, and World War I, along with a period of increased militarism, Japan declared war on China in 1937 and entered World War II in 1941 as an Axis power, defeated on the Pacific Front and subjected to 2 atomic bombs. Japan surrendered in 1945 and was placed under 7 years of Allied occupation. During this occupation, a new constitution was adopted. After the war, Japan achieved a great economic miracle that lasted until the economic recession of the 1990s. Since the adoption of the 1947 Constitution, Japan has been governed as a unitary parliamentary constitutional monarchy with a symbolic emperor as head of state and a popularly elected bicameral legislature called the National Diet. Japan is a member of the ASEAN Plus mechanism, the UN, the OECD, the G7, the G8, and the G20, and is considered a major power. Despite having officially renounced the right to declare war, Japan has a modern military with the world's 7th largest military budget, used in self-defense and peacekeeping roles. A global leader in the automotive, robotics, and electronics industries, and with significant contributions to science and technology, Japan has the world's 4th largest economy by nominal GDP and the 4th largest by purchasing power parity as of 2023, and is also one of the world's largest exporters and importers. Japan is considered one of the most developed countries in the world. with a very high standard of living according to the Human Development Index. Its population has one of the highest life expectancies and the third lowest infant mortality rate in the world. But it is experiencing a population decline due to its aging population and low birth rate. Japan is a cultural superpower with a comprehensive culture and art well known worldwide, a rich cuisine, an influential cinema and music industry, and a leading anime, manga, and video game industry. The United States Navy sent Commodore Matthew C. Perry to force Japan to open up to the outside world. Perry's expedition, which arrived in Uraga in July 1853 with 4 black ships, resulted in the Treaty of Kanagawa in March 1854. Subsequent similar treaties with other Western countries brought about economic and political crises. The resignation of the shogun led to the Boshin War and resulted in the establishment of a centralized state under a single emperor. The cabinet, which adopted Western political, judicial, and military institutions, organized the Privy Council, introduced the Meiji Constitution, and convened the Imperial Diet. The early 20th century saw a relatively democratic Taisho period, overshadowed by growing expansionism and militarization. Japan, which joined World War I on the side of the Allies, was allowed to seize German colonies in the Pacific and China. The 1920s witnessed a political shift towards a strict statism, a period of lawlessness following the 1923 Great Tokyo earthquake, the enactment of laws against political opposition, and a series of coup attempts. This process accelerated in the 1930s and gave rise to several radical nationalist groups who shared a hostility to liberal democracy and were committed to expansion in Asia. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria and, after international condemnation of the invasion, withdrew from the League of Nations 2 years later. In 1936, Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact with Nazi Germany, and in 1940, with the Tripartite Pact, it became one of the Axis powers. In 1937, Japan accelerated the Second Sino-Japanese War by invading other parts of China. In 1940, the empire invaded French Indochina, after which the United States imposed an oil embargo on Japan. On December 7 to 8, 1941, Japanese forces launched surprise attacks on Pearl Harbor and British forces in Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong, among others, starting World War II in the Pacific. Over the next 4 years, after the Allied victories culminating in the Soviet invasion of Manchuria and the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, Japan agreed to unconditional surrender. The war cost the lives of millions of people in Japan and the Far East. The Allies repatriated millions of Japanese settlers from their former colonies and military camps in Asia, largely eliminating the Japanese Empire and its influence over conquered territories. The Allies also convened the International Military Tribunal for the Far East to try Japanese leaders for war crimes. In 1947, Japan adopted a new constitution emphasizing liberal democratic practices. The Allied occupation ended with the Treaty of San Francisco in 1952, and Japan became a member of the United Nations in 1956. A period of record economic growth after the war made Japan the world's second largest economy. This period ended in the mid-1990s with the bursting of the asset price bubble, triggering an economic stagnation from which the country only gradually emerged in the early 21st century. In 2011, Japan experienced one of the largest earthquakes in world recorded history, triggering the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. The Reiwa era began on May 1st, 2019, with the abdication of Emperor Akihito and the accession of his son Naruhito as emperor. K. Knackler v. Iljalai Eisrick. Japan consists of 6,852 islands, stretching along the Pacific coast of Asia. It extends 3,000 kilometers northeast-southwest, from the Sea of Okhotsk to the East China Sea. The country's 5 main islands from north to south are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu, and Okinawa. The Ryukyu Islands, which include Okinawa, are a chain south of Kyushu. The Nampo Islands are located south and east of Japan's main islands. Together, they are often known as the Japanese archipelago. As of 2019, Japan's territory is 377,975.24 square kilometers. Japan has the 6th longest coastline in the world at 29,751 kilometers. Due to its islands being spread far and wide, Japan has the 8th largest exclusive economic zone in the world, covering 4,470,000 square kilometers. 67% of the Japanese archipelago is made up of forests, and 14% is made up of agricultural land. The essentially rugged and mountainous terrain is limited in terms of settlement. For this reason, habitable areas, especially in coastal areas, have a very high population density. Even without considering local concentration, Japan is the 40th most densely populated country. Honshu is the most densely populated island, with 450 people/km superscript 2 as of 2010, while Hokkaido is the least densely populated island, with 64.5 people/km superscript 2 as of 2016. Japan is highly prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions as it lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire. It has the 17th highest natural disaster risk as measured by the 2016 World Risk Index. There are 111 active volcanoes in Japan. Devastating earthquakes, mostly resulting in tsunamis, occur several times a century. The 1923 Kanto earthquake killed over 140,000 people. More recent major earthquakes include the 1995 Great Hanshin earthquake and the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, which triggered a major tsunami. Japan's climate is predominantly temperate, but varies greatly from north to south. Hokkaido, the northernmost region, has a humid continental climate with long, cold winters and very warm and cool summers. Precipitation is not heavy, but the islands often have deep snowdrifts in winter. In the Sea of Japan region on the west coast of Honshu, northwesterly winter winds bring heavy snowfall during the winter months. In summer, the region can sometimes experience extremely high temperatures due to the Fane wind. The Pacific coast has a humid subtropical climate with milder winters, with occasional snowfall and hot, humid summers due to the southeast seasonal wind. The Ryukyu and Nampo Islands have a subtropical climate, with warm winters and hot summers. Precipitation is very heavy, especially during the rainy season. In Okinawa, the main rainy season begins in early May, and the rain front gradually moves north. Typhoons often bring heavy rain in late summer and early autumn. According to the Ministry of the Environment, heavy rainfall and rising temperatures are causing problems in the agricultural sector and elsewhere.